guys, welcome to Bastion Time. I am your host, Bastion. This is Nintendo news. No, this is... I used to do this series called Bastion Rant, which sounds... You can hear the cat in the background just swatting things around. Anyways, I used to do a series called Bastion Rant, and I mean, it's an accurate title, but it sounds awfully egotistical. Like the name of this channel, for instance, Bastion Time, sounds a little... I didn't think it through very thoroughly when I first set it up, but anyway, this is just a rant video. It is a news story, so I guess technically it is Nintendo news, but I mean, really, I just want to rant about something that annoys me a little bit. And so let's cover the news story aspect first, which is that there's this game coming out, and it will be coming out for the Switch, called Yooka-Laylee. And if you're not familiar with this game at all, back in the day on the Nintendo 64, there was an amazing game called Banjo-Kazooie, and it was a Nintendo exclusive, I believe. The people who made that game left that company and founded a different company, and so they are making a spiritual successor. They can't... The IP is technically owned by Microsoft, and since they're not at Microsoft anymore, they can't make a Banjo-Kazooie game, so this is, for all intents and purposes, a Banjo-Kazooie game, just with slightly different characters, but the same basic gameplay. Anyways, that's what Yooka-Laylee is. And so there's this YouTube personality named JonTron who used to be on Game Grumps, and he was very funny, and anyways, he made it well known that he is a super huge fan of Banjo-Kazooie, so when Yooka-Laylee was being made, they approached him and said, "Hey, you're a big fan of Yooka-Laylee, well, Banjo-Kazooie, you want to be in Yooka-Laylee as a voice actor?" And so he did some voice acting for them. Well, in case you're not aware, he said some things recently that were not so PC, and so I'm not going to get into my opinions on that whatsoever. But anyways, he said some things, some people took offense, whatever, who cares about any of that? But the developers behind Yooka-Laylee are like, oh geez, we've got him as a voice actor in our game that's coming out pretty soon. Let's remove his voice acting and have it redone by somebody else. So that's the news story. Now here's my rant about it, which is that so many people are freaking out over this and saying, freedom of speech, he should be allowed to say whatever he wants, and they have no right to take him out of the game? Yeah, he does have the right to say whatever he wants. The government is not coming in and saying, hey, JonTron, you cannot say what you want. That's what freedom of speech means. It has nothing to do with businesses or whatever. For instance, if YouTube decided, hey, we're not kosher with what you said, or going to remove your channel, that still isn't a violation of free speech. YouTube is a business. They're allowed to say, we don't like what you're saying, so we're going to not employ you anymore. We're not going to give you money anymore. They're allowed to do that. Freedom of speech only pertains to the government coming in and saying, JonTron, you can't say that anymore. And that's not happening, so there's no violation of free speech going on here. So, anyways, this development company is totally allowed to say, you know, we don't want to be involved in this controversy, whether we agree with it or not. We don't want to be a part of it, so we're gonna not be a part of it. We're gonna take out your voice acting, and, you know, that... I guess what's so frustrating to me are two things. Thing number one is nobody in America seems to know what freedom of speech actually means. Everybody thinks it means you can say whatever you want and no business or school or anything can shut you down, and that's simply not true. Only pertains to the government. Schools, businesses, you know, some random group that's not government related totally has a right to fire you or do whatever just because they want to and they don't like what you're saying. That's just the sad truth. So again, I'm not going to get into my opinion about what he said, whether well, fine. I disagree with what he said, but I'm also not super educated on exactly what he said. I listened to what he said, and whether that was taken out of context or whatever doesn't jive with my own personal beliefs, so whatever. But, you know, if Platonic decided to leave his voice acting in, I'd probably still get Yooka-Laylee because, you know, whatever. And so the fact that they've taken it out shouldn't make anybody not want to buy Yooka-Laylee, because they have every right to employ whomever they want. And that's all it comes down to, is they gave him money, he did voice acting for them. They're not taking their money back. He has their money. They're just taking out his voice acting because they don't want to be involved in a controversy. So that's basically what I'm trying to get at here, is that so many people don't understand what freedom of speech actually means, and they think that it's not okay or kosher for them to take out his voice acting, and they can do whatever they want. It's their game. They're allowed to do whatever they want with their game. If they employed somebody who designed a character and that person said some things that became well known that they're not comfortable with, they can take out that character model and employ a brand new artist to create a new character model or whatever. You know, it all comes down to, it's a business, and they don't want to have this hanging over their heads, so they're just doing what's in their best interest. And so many people out there are like, oh, well, now that they've done that, I'm not going to buy the game. Something tells me they weren't going to buy the game anyway, to begin with. If that's all it takes to get them to not buy the game, that some voice acting was taken out of it, they weren't going to buy it. So many people are like, oh, well, they're taking it out because they're afraid it's going to affect their sales, but them taking it out is what's actually going to affect their sales. People aren't going to buy it now, and it's like, that's really not true. I'm sure 75% of the people who were thinking about buying that game have no idea who JonTron is, and have no idea that he said these things. And so, I don't know. I'm babbling, but I'm just so annoyed. But one of my biggest pet peeves is when people don't understand basic concepts. This comes to emulation also. I did a news story a couple days ago, or whenever that was, about how this journalist had a headline saying something like, Breath of the Wild coming to PC, and in the body of the news story says like, oh, this is great for Nintendo because, and he even mentions that it's done on emulation, but he clearly doesn't understand what an emulator is, and so he's like, this is great for Nintendo because it improves the public's perception of Breath of the Wild. More people are now hearing about it because it's also coming out for PC, and it boosts their sales. How? Anyways, that was a news story that I covered, and tons of commenters didn't understand what I was saying about emulation. First of all, I'm not saying that emulation is good or bad. I don't really care one way or the other. All I'm saying is that the majority of the people who are going to be playing Breath of the Wild on their PC are not doing it legally. Emulators are not illegal, but let's be real here. Emulation, the majority of emulation is done on pirated games. Sure, you can emulate a game legally, technically, as long as that game has made it, the developers of that game have made it allowed to be emulated legally if they've provided their permission for that, but that is not the case for 99.99999% of games. Let's just be real here. When we talk about emulation, we're talking about games that are copyrighted, that you're not playing legally when you're emulating them. So, anyways, I'm just frustrated when people when I talk about emulation and how obviously Breath of the Wild, nobody's emulating that legally, and then people try to say, well, but emulation is totally legal because emulators are legal. And it's like, yeah, but that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is how Breath of the Wild is being emulated. Anyways, I was babbling so much and reiterated myself so many times during that rant that my phone ran out of space to record this video, so I think that about covers it. Yeah, basically one of my biggest pet peeves is when people try to nitpick and sort of obfuscate what it is that the topic is, and try to make points that don't really have anything to do with the main topic at hand, and that irritates me. But anyways, that's it for this episode. See you guys tomorrow for some actual news. See you then. Bye, guys.